Bitcoin is, my guess is that it will eventually break lower, but that doesn't mean you can't have counter trend rallies before that happens. I don't really want to try to nail down timing of exact things. I don't know exactly when things are going to occur, but it is true that you will often find sort of these lows that occur somewhat cyclically, like Q1, like tends to be around February and then June and then Q4. And you can kind of see it over here too, like February, June, and then Q4.
Bitcoin is currently trapped in a narrowing range, and the next major move could define the market for months to come. Crypto analyst Benjamin Cowen points out that Bitcoin is being squeezed between two powerful technical forces: the rising 200-week moving average pressing from below and the falling bear market resistance band closing in from above. With this range tightening, a decisive breakout or breakdown is approaching. Cowen's current lean is toward an eventual move lower, though he is clear that counter-trend rallies are very much on the table before that happens, meaning short-term bounces should not be mistaken for a confirmed reversal. At the same time, crypto analyst Jesse Olson is sounding a sharper alarm. If the U.S. stock market suffers a severe crash, Olson warns that Bitcoin could fall as low as $24,000 by 2026, a scenario that a rising number of market analysts believe cannot be dismissed given today's fragile economic environment. What makes this moment particularly significant is where Bitcoin sits right now. Thomas Perfumo, chief economist at Kraken, notes that Bitcoin is dangerously close to its 200-week simple moving average, one of the most watched long-term support levels in crypto. That average currently sits at around $62,000. And while Bitcoin is holding just above it at approximately $64,000, it has already slipped below that level twice in the past 2 weeks, recovering both times by week's end. That repeated dipping and recovering is not a signal to ignore. It tells investors that Bitcoin is fighting hard to hold a historically critical level. Before you go, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you never miss our latest Bitcoin market insights analysis.
Bitcoin is still well below the bear market resistance band. And one of the things we talked about previously is how within bear markets, Bitcoin will test that band multiple times. And some of those times it even goes above it slightly. But you can see that to expect multiple rejections by the bear market resistance band in bear markets, right? I mean, that's why we call it the bear market resistance band, is because in the bear market, Bitcoin really struggles to sustain itself above it. The only time, the only bear market where we really got above it for any longer period of time was in 2014, where we got above it for a little while, but it still was relatively short-lived. Like, it's not like it lasted that long before we ended up continuing down. So right now, what it seems like is happening is you have the 200-week moving average kind of trending up. You have the bear market resistance band trending down, and Bitcoin is like moving between these two things and trying to figure out which way it's going to break. Now, clearly, knowing the 4-year cycle history of Bitcoin, like, you have to at least be open-minded to the idea that it could eventually break down, like it did in, the end of 2022 and the end of 2018 and the end of 2014, right? Like, I mean, I'm not saying it has to, but, it would be foolish to pretend like it can't happen, because this is what we've seen happen every midterm year. And, we go through these discussions and I make these videos, and then I offend someone who's convinced the low is in, like they have been multiple times before. And, the hard thing is, like, you could believe the low is in for Bitcoin, and maybe you're right, but you can believe that and still kind of recognize that, hey, yeah, you still could see it go a little lower as the year goes on. And one of the reasons I say that, frankly, is just because if you look at things like the realized price for Bitcoin, like, normally it goes below it in bear markets, and we just simply haven't gone below it yet, right? And so for me, it makes me think that, all right, well, we likely will go below it at some point later on this year. I don't know exactly when, but it seems like a likely outcome. Now, right now, the bear market resistance band to the upside is around $70,000 to $74,000. Okay, so we're not really that far removed from it. I know that feels like a lot, but I mean, we had a week in June where Bitcoin opened the week at 73K and closed the week at 63K. So we dropped $10,000 in a single week. Let's see how this plays out. What usually happens, and again, I can't say what will happen, but I'll say what usually happens is that Bitcoin will form a low in the early part of the summer, and then it'll get some type of counter trend rally in the later part of the summer.
If history is any guide, Bitcoin may be setting up for one of the most important moments of this cycle. Benjamin Cowen has identified a striking pattern playing out right now. In both 2018 and 2022, Bitcoin followed the same summer script, forming a significant low in June, grinding weekly through early July, and then launching a powerful counter-trend rally through late July and August. Even in 2014, when the timeline shifted slightly due to a later market top, the same general rhythm eventually played out. The message is consistent across cycles. Bitcoin tends to find its summer floor before staging a meaningful recovery move. Bitcoin is currently sitting near the bottom of its recent range, and this is the moment of truth. A failure to bounce from current levels would be a serious warning sign that the recovery has already exhausted itself. Even more critically, a break below the $59,000 to $60,000 lows set earlier this month would open the door to a much deeper sell-off, with traders already targeting $45,000 as the next major level. This move would represent substantial further losses. Yet Cowen urges investors not to panic or chase precision. He cautions that while July has historically produced a higher low in the last two bear markets, history does not repeat exactly, and attempting to call the precise bottom is a losing game. His guidance is to stay focused on the bigger picture and broader market trends rather than getting lost in short-term noise. For investors, the message is both clear and urgent. Bitcoin is at a historically significant juncture. The pattern is familiar, and the next few weeks could determine whether this cycle follows its summer playbook or writes an entirely new chapter. Let's get back to the video.
So if you look at Bitcoin in 2022, you can see that it found a low in June and still stayed weak into early July, and then had this counter trend rally into like late July and August. And then if you look at 2018, you can see that Bitcoin found a low in like really late June, still stayed weak in about mid or early July, had that counter trend rally in late July. So, and then in 2014 was a little bit different because we didn't really top until June. So that's not the best comparison. But I mean, you can see like what usually happens is that Bitcoin forms a low sometime kind of in the early part of the summer. I would say June is when it tends to form, but a lot of times the weakness will still persist into July. The last two bear markets, the July weakness was still a higher low, but obviously it's not guaranteed to be that way. If you look at the 2014 move, Bitcoin actually was dropping in July. Okay, after a pretty big move at the very end of July. So I'm not like, the path to get to the market cycle low is very hard to nail down. And this is why I said at the very beginning of the year, late last year, I was like, look guys, just pretend like Bitcoin doesn't even exist for the first half of this year. Ignore it, assume all counter trend rallies get faded and that we eventually go lower, and then start looking at it more seriously in the second half of the year. Well, we're only about a little over a week away from the second half of the year, and some of the on-chain indicators have reset, but not all of them. What I would say is Bitcoin is, my guess is that it will eventually break lower, but that doesn't mean you can't have counter trend rallies before that happens. So, I don't really want to try to nail down timing of exact things. Like, I don't know exactly when things are going to occur, but it is true that you will often find sort of these lows that occur somewhat cyclically, like Q1, like tends to be around February, and then June, and then Q4. And you can kind of see it over here too, like February, June, and then Q4. What's interesting is the altcoin market in 2018 bled out while Bitcoin was going sideways. So you might actually see, and that happened in July. Like the altcoin market got annihilated in July 2018, and Bitcoin was basically doing okay. So you could, and it's not impossible for something like that to happen, because if you look at social interest, it's completely dropping off. Like if you look at the social risk that we talked about the other day, like it's been dropping fairly quickly for a long time. And so when you think about like the hundreds of thousands of altcoins that exist, and you have fewer and fewer retail buying those alts, then it wouldn't be like the most outlandish idea to say that, hey, maybe some of these alts won't have, the best time. And so that's a consideration to make. But I mean, as far as Bitcoin goes, it's basically, as I've said before, like it's kind of between a rock and a hard place, right? Like you're getting rejected by the bear market resistance band, and then you're also trying to hold support at the 200-week moving average, which it has previously found some success at. It's just the last cycle it managed to go through it. But when it went through it, it was in June, and we're in June now. And so if we can continue to hold it, then it would raise the odds of maybe a brief counter trend rally into July, kind of like we got in 2022.
Bitcoin is at a crossroads, and for investors who are paying attention, this moment may be one of the most significant opportunities this cycle has to offer. Historical patterns are aligning, on-chain data is evolving, and critical price levels are all converging at the same time. This is not a moment to look away. Markets rarely announce their most important turning points loudly. They reveal them quietly to those who are watching closely and thinking clearly. What key signal will decide Bitcoin's next major move from this critical range? If you found this analysis valuable, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest Bitcoin and crypto market updates. We appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you for watching.